What is the new American dream? The new American dream is going to change our lives. Under the new American dream, Americans will start seeing less debt and more prosperity. We'll stop throwing away most of our income on rent, debt, and taxes that make corrupt corporations rich. We'll have a stable foundation to build our lives on and support our families and communities. We'll work fewer hours for higher wages, retire younger, and we'll have plenty of savings for a rainy day, natural disasters, emergencies, accidents, illnesses, even international pandemics. We'll have more time to spend with our families, raise our own kids instead of sending them off to schools to bond with other adults when they should be bonding with their parents. We used to live in a society where one parent would go to work and the other parent would stay home and raise the children. Now, both parents are forced to work and the government is left to raise our children. Why? What sense does that make? The new American dream is going to fix all those problems, and the best part about it is it doesn't have any opposition. Normally, the Democrats push for one improvement and the Republicans push back, or the Republicans push for another improvement and the Democrats push back. But the best part about this plan is that it doesn't have any opposition, because it doesn't require an increase in minimum wages or UBI, and it includes eliminating a lot of taxes. In order to see how this works, we have to first understand the problem. Today, 87% of Americans are in debt, and nobody truly owns property. Many complain that the rent is too damn high and think that rent controls and higher minimum wages will solve the problem. But high rent and low wages are only symptoms of a much bigger problem. There are some important questions that nobody is asking. Why does everyone have to rent? Why doesn't anyone truly own property? And why are we so willing to accept jobs that pay so little? A lot of people think that they own their homes, but do they really? Most Americans are perpetually in debt, starting with 30-year mortgages that get refinanced from time to time, extending that debt further out. And even if you can pay off your entire mortgage, you still have to pay rent to the government or risk losing your entire investment. That's right, if you fall just a few $1,000s behind on your property tax, they can take away the property that you've spent years paying off. There are many programs paid for by property tax, and it doesn't take a genius to argue that those are necessary. But let's set that aside for a minute and look at the consequences of the taxes themselves. Property taxes in America are between 1% and 3%. That means if you're able to buy a home and completely pay it off, you still have to buy it back from the government every 30 to 100 years. That property could be passed to your kids, but instead, you have to keep buying it back over and over again. If you don't, the government will take it away and all of the equity and hard work that you've put into building it. The government also has many other ways to take this property from you. If you inherit the property, it will usually be reappraised, which means the taxes are going to go so far up that you or your kids will have to sell it. You won't be able to afford that tax. I know that there are many people who are unsympathetic to people who own their homes in the first place because they don't own property themselves. But if you're one of those people, consider this. Your parents might have already gone through this confiscation and lost the property that could have been in your family for generations. That's right, your great-grandparents might have owned property. Maybe not a house that would still be standing today, but the land that it was on. And because the government has taxed your parents and grandparents, none of that is left. These taxes have been used to steal land away from farmers over generations. These were small family farms that used to provide most of America's food. But now, because of these taxes, mega corporations have been able to consolidate and buy most of the tax-impaired farms. We're losing further control of our food supply as foreign corporations are buying those consolidated farms, like Smithfield Foods, one of the largest pork farms in America. This could pose a serious risk because a trade war is always right around the corner. There was a time when Americans would own land, homes, farms, factories. When banks and corporations would come to try to buy them out, the owners would tell them that America is not for sale. But through taxes and debt, Americans have been put into a position where they are forced to sell. Now we own almost nothing. When Americans own property rent-free and tax-free, they can save more and have a lot stashed away for a rainy day. The economic toll that the coronavirus has taken in just a few months is proof that our current economic model is not sustainable. Income taxes make it even harder for Americans because you don't even get to keep all of what you earned to pay off your debt or your property taxes. This means we all have to work more hours. It also means that as soon as the paycheck stops, we are doomed to fail. Fear of losing the next paycheck makes us desperate for work and makes us fight over the few jobs available, increasing our willingness to accept lower wages, even though we deserve so much more. Many industries have been automated, and we've been threatened that this is going to hurt the job market. I disagree. Automation means our entire country is producing more with less work. It means that we shouldn't have to work so hard to have successful and prosperous lives. We should be working fewer hours and retiring younger. The only reason we are begging for more work is that we don't own property, which forces us to rent and keeps us from paying off our debts. Oh yeah, and of course all those taxes that they take from us while subsidizing corporations is making it even harder for us to pay off that debt. When we aren't begging for work, it's easier to turn down low-paying jobs. We don't need higher minimum wage laws if corporations are begging the workers instead. Employees will also be treated more fairly once the power is put back in our hands. The FHA has to be eliminated. At first glance, this sounds like a terrible idea because the FHA is credited for making housing more affordable. But consider that if you can afford $1,000 per month, the bank will lend you as much as they can so that your final payment comes out to exactly $1,000. Traditionally, banks had to manage their risks to maintain solvency and stay in business. That means they could only lend to you for 5 or 10 years. When the FHA came along and guaranteed these loans, now the banks can give you 30-year loans with very little risk because the government is backing it up. Thanks to the FHA, these banks can give you loans that are now 30 years at that same $1,000 payment. That means you're paying $1,000 a month for 30 years instead of just 5 or 10. And just because you're borrowing more money doesn't mean you're getting a better house. This is market inflation. This means they're dumping a ton of money into the market and driving the housing prices up. That's exactly what happened in the 2008 crisis, but they were allowed to inflate the prices even more. The bubble only popped halfway, and we're still seeing inflated prices that go all the way back to the 1930s. Because the prices have been pushed so high, fewer people are able to buy houses and they're forced to rent instead. This is a waste of money. Lower prices make it easier for people to buy, and having a loan that's paid off in a fraction of the time means we're not going to be perpetually in debt. And having a loan with a much shorter term also means we're going to save a lot of money on interest. Getting rid of property tax and income tax means that people paying their current mortgages will be able to pay them off more quickly, saving tens of thousands on interest. And when the loan is paid off, they won't be beholden to the government to pay property tax for eternity. Getting rid of inheritance taxes means that people can pass their property to their family's future generations. That means that more people will have less need to work and more time to be productive and innovative for themselves and their communities. Fewer people needing work means more job availability, which means employees have more power to pick a job that's right for them and to demand higher pay and better working conditions. There is a natural inclination for those who do not own property to want to tax people who have so much more. And politicians who want to continue robbing America of its wealth will often rally people behind higher taxes with false promises that this money will help the sick and the poor. It is so important not to follow these policies. They're lies. All they do is make things harder for people who are working to get out of debt and into their own property. We live in a complex economy with a very complex financial system that has been used to rob Americans of their true wealth. It's time we wake up to that design and make a change. It's time to return to a society that can declare our own property is not for sale. It's time to get out of debt and claim ownership of our own lives and our livelihood. It's time to take that power back. Taxes are not the only source of revenue that the government has. They could continue to provide essential services without them. Non-essential services should be paid for only by the people who use them. Ending this tax exploitation will bring about the new American dream for everyone.